In pursuit of an extraordinary life, the mindset shift that changes everything. What if the life you've been chasing isn't actually the one that leads to fulfillment? What if the extraordinary you've been taught to admire is actually keeping you stuck in cycles of frustration, burnout, and self-doubt? Most people think an extraordinary life looks like this: perfect career, exotic vacations, flawless routines, optimized habits, and constant self-improvement. But here's the quiet truth most never realize. Chasing more isn't what makes life extraordinary. It's what makes it exhausting. Think about it. How many times have you hit a goal, celebrated for a moment, and then felt that uncomfortable emptiness creep back in? That wasn't failure. That was clarity. A glimpse of how the version of success you've been taught to pursue might be flawed from the start. We've been conditioned to believe that meaning comes from the big moments, promotions, launches, life milestones. But in reality, what shapes your experience of life isn't the intensity of a few rare events. It's the quality of your ordinary days. And maybe that's the real shift. The extraordinary life isn't something you chase. It's something you learn to see differently. You don't need a radical reinvention. You need new eyes. In this video, I'm not going to sell you another productivity system. I'm going to offer something deeper, a new mental operating system, one that rewires how you approach time, work, relationships, meaning, and growth. And it starts by asking one simple question. If your current definition of success hasn't led to peace, then what exactly are you optimizing for? Let's go deeper. We're going to explore 7 invisible principles that quietly shape the way extraordinary lives are built. Not by hustle, not by perfection, but by perspective. This video won't show you how to do more. It will help you understand why doing less with more intention creates a far richer life. If you're feeling burned out, disoriented, or like you've been climbing a ladder that might be leaning against the wrong wall, you're in the right place. Because what most people call normal is often a noisy, distracted, reactive way of living. And what few people talk about is this: an extraordinary life doesn't feel loud, it feels light. This isn't about escaping discomfort. It's about learning how to use discomfort as a compass. It's not about finding your passion, it's about finding your clarity. And it's definitely not about having it all. It's about knowing what actually matters and having the courage to let go of everything else. We'll talk about decisions that age well, how to access your future wisdom now, why chasing happiness might be sabotaging your contentment, and how focusing deeply on the right things can change the entire texture of your life. Here's the thing: everyone wants more meaning, more joy, more alignment. But few people are willing to pause long enough to question the map they're following, because questioning the map is scary. It means admitting you might have been climbing the wrong mountain. But it's also liberating, because it means you can choose a new path, one that feels lighter, quieter, clearer. So before we dive into the first principle, I want you to sit with this one thought. What if extraordinary isn't something you achieve, but something you begin to notice once you stop chasing the wrong things? Let's begin. The regret minimization lens. How to decide like your future. There's a version of you that already knows the answer. It's not the version overwhelmed by notifications, juggling deadlines, or chasing validation in the moment. It's the version sitting quietly at 80 years old, weathered by time, softened by wisdom, clear on what actually mattered and what was noise. Imagine sitting down with that version of you. No filters, no pretenses, just an honest, unhurried conversation with the you who has lived the whole story. What would they tell you about the decision you're wrestling with today? That relationship you're unsure of? That career move you keep postponing? That truth you're scared to say out loud? The regret minimization lens invites you to look at life from that higher vantage point, not through the lens of short-term comfort, but through the eyes of your older, wiser self. Because here's the thing: most people don't regret failing. They regret not trying. They don't regret discomfort. They regret staying silent. They don't regret taking the leap. They regret the years they spent waiting for permission to live. When you ask your 80-year-old self for advice, you bypass your present bias, the mental trap that overvalues the now and undervalues the forever. In the present, fear is loud. Uncertainty is sharp. But from the vantage point of hindsight, only clarity remains. Try this. Picture the moment you're avoiding, the phone call, the move, the beginning, or the end. Now ask, when I'm 80, what will I wish I had done? The answer won't always be easy, but it will almost always be true, because future you doesn't care about what others would think. They care about alignment, integrity, inner peace. Let's take something simple. You've been avoiding a hard conversation with someone you love. You tell yourself it's not the right time. You rationalize that keeping the peace matters more than saying what's real. But zoom out, you're 80. Looking back, will you remember how uncomfortable it was? Or will you ache at the memory of everything that was left unsaid? The regret framework is powerful, not because it makes hard decisions easy, but because it makes what truly matters visible. It brings your values forward in time, letting them speak louder than your fears. Think of it like a time-traveling compass. Every time you feel lost, afraid, or stuck between two paths, you don't ask, what's safer? You ask, what choice will I be proud of when I'm old? Because that's the life you're actually building, not the one that impresses others. The one you'll carry when the applause fades, the metrics vanish, and only your reflection remains. But here's what most people get wrong. They think regret is something to be avoided, so they play small, stay quiet, numb the discomfort. But regret isn't a punishment, it's a messenger. It's your future self whispering through time. You were meant for more. And if you can learn to listen to that voice early, your entire trajectory changes. This isn't about being reckless, it's about being real. It's not about chasing every whim. It's about anchoring your choices in long-term truth instead of short-term ease. Now let's go deeper. The regret minimization mindset doesn't just apply to big, dramatic life moments. It applies to your daily patterns, your daily energy, your daily honesty, the missed workout, the scrolled hours, the conversation you avoided. These small moments compound, and your future self remembers. Every day, you're making deposits into one of two accounts: the life you'll look back on with peace, or the one you'll revisit with ache. So ask yourself, will I regret staying quiet or speaking up? Will I regret staying or leaving? Will I regret playing it safe or risking alignment? And here's the twist. Most of the time, what feels like risk right now is actually the thing that will protect you from regret later. That discomfort you feel. It's often the gateway to your most meaningful growth. Let's flip the script. Instead of asking, what if it goes wrong? Ask, what if I never try? Instead of obsessing over the discomfort of doing something hard, start fearing the quiet erosion of never becoming who you were meant to be. That's the real cost, not the rejection, not the failure, but the numbness that comes from consistently choosing the path of least resistance. Because one day, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but one day, you will sit with yourself, and the only thing louder than your victories will be your silences. Here's the uncomfortable truth. We're all going to have regrets, but we get to choose which kind. The regret of trying and failing, that fades. It becomes a story, a lesson, a scar you carry with pride. But the regret of never trying, that one lingers. It echoes. So what if you started living with your 80-year-old self in mind? What if that version of you became your mentor, not to pressure you into perfection, but to liberate you into alignment? The extraordinary life doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from choosing the pain that means something. It comes from walking into discomfort with the clarity that on the other side of it lives freedom. So the next time you hesitate, pause and ask, will I regret not doing this? If the answer is yes, then your future self has already spoken. Listen, Ikigai, the hidden map to an extraordinary life, in a world obsessed with chasing the next big thing, the next goal, the next upgrade, the next version of you. There's a quiet question echoing beneath the surface. What truly makes life worth waking up for? Not what makes you wealthy, not what makes you impressive, but what makes you feel alive. That question has a name. In Japanese, it's called Ikigai, and no, it's not just a pretty word you slap on a coffee mug or a bullet journal. It's a framework for your soul, a compass that helps you navigate toward the life that's not only productive, but deeply meaningful. At its core, Ikigai sits at the intersection of four forces: what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. When these four overlap, they don't just create a nice idea, they create your version of the extraordinary life. And here's the myth that needs breaking. Finding your Ikigai doesn't require quitting your job, moving to a monastery, or building something revolutionary from scratch. Often, it's already there, quiet, buried under obligations, distractions, and shoulds. It just needs to be uncovered. So, let's begin with the first corner of the map, what you love. These are the things that make you forget time exists, the activities that spark something inside you. Not because they're useful, not because they're impressive, but because when you do them, you feel aligned, present, real. If you've ever lost yourself in a conversation, in a creation, in a cause, you've touched the edge of this zone, but passion alone is not enough. That brings us to the second point, what you're good at. This is about natural ability, yes, but also about the things you're willing to work at, skills you're committed to sharpening, crafts you're willing to practice in silence without applause, simply because they matter to you. Extraordinary lives aren't built on talent, they're built on attention, and when passion meets skill, something powerful awakens, excellence, with emotion. The third piece of the puzzle is what the world needs, and this is where Ikigai goes from personal to purposeful. Because it's not just about your joy, it's about your contribution. What pain are you uniquely positioned to ease? What question can you help answer? What gap in the world aches for your voice, your story, your solution? This part doesn't have to be massive. You don't need to save the planet. You just need to show up, in your own way, in your own lane, offering something real. Now the final piece, what you can be paid for. This isn't about selling out. It's about sustainability. It's about turning your purpose into a path you can actually walk, not just dream about, because meaning without means often leads to burnout, and profit without purpose leads to emptiness. When you connect all four, love, skill, service, and sustainability, you create something rare. A life that fuels you, elevates others, and endures. But let's get real. Most people don't live in full alignment. They live in fragments. Some are doing what they love, but they're broke. Some are doing what they're good at, but feel empty. Some are making good money, but they hate Mondays. And some are helping others while silently burning out. That's why Ikigai isn't just an idea. It's a diagnostic tool. It shows you where you're out of sync, where your energy leaks, where your fulfillment is being blocked by imbalance. Start asking, which of the four pieces is missing right now? Where am I overextended? Where am I undernourished? You don't need to fix it all at once. Just start with the gap that feels loudest, the ache that's been quietly asking for your attention. And don't fall for the myth that your Ikigai must be some grand revelation. Sometimes it's a series of small pivots, changing how you show up, redefining what success looks like, saying no more often to make room for what's real, because you might already be close. You might just be a few decisions away from alignment. Let me give you an image. Imagine a dial, not a switch. Ikigai isn't something you flip on. It's something you tune into, gradually, patiently, intentionally. Some days, you'll feel fully aligned. Other days, you'll feel off-key, but with awareness and reflection, you keep adjusting. And over time, the static clears. That's when life begins to sing. Here's the deeper truth. Ikigai doesn't guarantee that life will be easy, but it does guarantee that it will be meaningful, and meaning is what gives pain its purpose. What gives struggle its shape? What gives joy its depth? So if you've ever wondered why success didn't feel as good as it looked, if you've ever achieved the thing and still felt the void, this is your call to alignment. Stop chasing. Start listening. Start aligning. Your Ikigai has been waiting, not in some distant future, but in the rhythm of what you already love, what you already know, and what you already are. You're not lost. You're just remembering, and the life you're looking for has been looking for you too. Anti-fragility, turning volatility into advantage. Most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid chaos. They build routines, safety nets, comfort zones, all in the name of stability. But here's the twist, the truly extraordinary life. isn't built on avoiding chaos. It's built on learning how to dance with it. Let me explain. There's a difference between being resilient and being anti-fragile. A resilient person can take a hit and still stand. They survive the storm. But an anti-fragile person, they grow because of the storm. They emerge from disruption not just intact, but improved. That's the secret. Resilience is about resistance. Anti-fragility is about transformation. Think of your muscles. They don't grow by resting. They grow through stress, through tension, through tiny tears that rebuild stronger. That's anti-fragility in action. Now apply that to your mind, your habits, your life choices. Most people try to build a life that avoids volatility. They create systems that are only strong until something unexpected happens. A job loss, a breakup, a failure. But what if you built a system that benefits from the unexpected? That's what the extraordinary do. They don't just brace for impact. They position themselves to evolve through it. Here's how. Start by redefining your relationship with difficulty. Most people see pain, criticism, or loss as signs of failure. But the anti-fragile person? They see it as feedback, as opportunity, as a trigger for adaptation. Think about this. When was the last time you truly grew, not just on paper but internally? It probably wasn't when things were easy. It was during the fight, the heartbreak, the collapse. Because that's when life stops whispering and starts teaching. The extraordinary life doesn't avoid those moments. It leverages them. Here's a mental model that changes everything. Don't just ask, how can I recover from this? Ask, how can this make me better? It's a subtle shift, but it turns every challenge into fuel. Let's look at a few examples. Criticism. The fragile avoid it. The resilient endure it. But the anti-fragile seek it. Because it reveals where to grow. They don't crave approval. They crave truth, not because it's comfortable, but because it's valuable. Failure. The fragile collapse under it. The resilient bounce back. But the anti-fragile extract, meaning build wisdom and adjust their trajectory faster than before. They don't just ask, why did this happen? They ask, what is this teaching me that success never could? Uncertainty. The fragile try to control everything. The resilient hold on. But the anti-fragile adapt in real time. They build systems that are flexible, not rigid. They don't fear the unknown. They innovate in it. Because anti-fragility isn't about predicting the storm. It's about training for any weather. But here's the catch. You can't develop this mindset by thinking alone. You have to expose yourself to controlled doses of discomfort, what some call voluntary hardship. That might look like saying yes to the project you're not 100% ready for, asking the question everyone avoids, taking the risk no one else is willing to, waking up earlier to do the deep work before the world interrupts. Each time you face volatility on purpose, you rewire your response. You build what psychologists call psychological flexibility, the ability to move with pressure, not against it. Let me give you a metaphor. Picture two trees in a storm. One is stiff and rigid, strong in appearance, but when the wind comes, it snaps. The other bends, sways, flexes with the chaos, and when the storm passes, it's still rooted, stronger than before. You want to be that second tree. But let's get practical. How do you become anti-fragile? It starts with a shift in perception, from I hope this doesn't break me, to how can I use this to build me? Then apply 3 powerful practices. Strategic exposure. Don't avoid hard things. Choose them. Expose yourself to challenge in controlled environments. Cold showers, public speaking, learning new skills. Anything that pushes you out of autopilot. And into presence. This strengthens your threshold. What once felt overwhelming becomes normal, and you expand. Feedback. Loops. Create systems that collect honest feedback. From mentors, from your results, from your own reflection. Don't fear the mirror, face it, use it. Refine your process through iteration, not perfection. Reframing setbacks. Train your mind to see problems as prompts. Every closed door redirects you to a better one. if you stay awake. Instead of asking, "Why me?" ask, "What now?" And here's the truth no one likes to admit. Comfort is seductive but dangerous. It whispers lies, tells you you're fine, numbs your hunger, but nothing extraordinary has ever come from comfort. Not purpose, not power, not peace. The most powerful people you admire, they've been tempered, not protected. They didn't avoid the fire. They learned how to walk through it, because anti-fragility is a practice, a mindset, a lifestyle. It's how you show up when things don't go your way. It's how you grow from what was meant to break you. It's how you become the kind of person who doesn't just endure life, but transforms through it. So the next time life shakes your foundation, don't ask how to return to normal. Ask how to rise stronger, wiser, and more unshakable than ever before. Deep work versus shallow work, the hidden superpower. In a world flooded with notifications, open tabs, and half-finished thoughts, the ability to truly focus has become almost supernatural. We live in the age of distraction. Our brains, once capable of deep reflective thought, are now conditioned to bounce between pings, reels, headlines, and shallow dopamine hits. But while everyone else is scrolling, some people are quietly building empires. What's their secret? It's not talent, it's not time, it's not even intelligence. It's something rarer than ever: deep work. Let's break it down. Deep work is the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. It's writing the book, designing the product, solving the complex problem. It's what leads to original ideas, powerful results, and meaningful satisfaction. Shallow work is everything else. Replying to emails, skimming articles, organizing your desktop. It feels like progress, but leaves you empty. It's activity without depth. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people spend 90% of their days in shallow work and wonder why they feel unfulfilled. But those who choose deep work, they unlock the closest thing we have to a superpower. In the modern world, they produce 10x the results in half the time. They feel meaning instead of fatigue. And over time, they separate themselves from the noise. Think about it. When was the last time you were so immersed in something? That time disappeared, that the world faded away, and all that remained was you and the task. That wasn't just productivity. That was presence. That was flow. That was a glimpse of what you're truly capable of. Deep work doesn't just change your output, it changes your identity. But here's the paradox. We crave this experience, yet we structure our lives to destroy it. We keep our phones in reach. We check messages in between thoughts. We treat interruptions as normal, and attention as something we owe to everyone else. Here's the mindset shift. Your attention is your most valuable currency. Every time you give it away, you're writing a check with your life. So how do you reclaim it? Let's go deeper. The cost of distraction. Every time you're interrupted, even for a second, it takes your brain up to 23 minutes to fully return to the same level of focus. Now multiply that by how often you check your phone, your email, or your feeds. It's no wonder people feel like they're working all day, but accomplishing nothing that matters. But here's the real danger. Distraction doesn't just steal your time. It rewires your brain. It trains your mind to become addicted to shallowness. Every time you switch tasks without finishing, you're reinforcing a mental loop that says, stay on the surface, don't dive, don't feel. That's how people lose years without realizing it. But there's a way back. The deep work protocol, how to train your mind just like your body. Your mind becomes what you train it to do. If you want deep focus, you need deep training. Here are 3 rituals that change everything. Time blocks, not to-do lists. To-do lists keep you busy. Time blocks make you powerful. Choose one high-impact task per day, then schedule 90 minutes of uninterrupted focus to do just that. This isn't multitasking. This is your creative dojo. Phones off, tabs closed, brain on. The goal isn't to finish everything, it's to go deep on what truly matters. Build a pre-focus ritual before every deep work session. Do the same 3 things. Light a candle. Put on instrumental music. Close the door. This tells your brain it's time. Over time, this ritual becomes an anchor, and your mind will start slipping into focus automatically. Embrace boredom like a monk. You can't train focus if you bore. Never experience silence. Most people reach for their phone the moment boredom appears. But boredom is not your enemy. It's your gateway. Try this. Once a day, sit for 10 minutes and do nothing. No music, no scrolling, no stimulus. You'll feel resistance at first. That's your brain detoxing from noise. But within days, you'll notice something. You start thinking clearly. Ideas emerge. Your attention strengthens. It's like turning the static down, so you can finally hear yourself again. Why deep work? Feels like magic. The world rewards clarity, creativity, and consistency, all of which are born from deep work. But that's not all. Deep work is a spiritual act. It reconnects you to your inner voice, the part of you that knows what matters, what you're here to build, and what needs to be said before your time runs out. When you live in a state of distraction, you drift. When you live in deep work, you design. You become the architect of your day, your craft, your destiny, and the results? Not only will you create work that stands the test of time, you'll feel the kind of peace that shallow living could never offer. So here's your challenge for the next 7 days. Block 90 minutes per day. Turn off everything else. Pick the one task that truly matters. And dive in like your legacy depends on it. Because maybe it does. The 80-20 principle, the hidden pattern of an extraordinary life. Here's something nobody teaches in school. Not all effort is created equal. You can spend 10 hours working on something that gives you almost nothing in return. Or one focused hour that changes everything. Why? Because life is not linear. It's exponential. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you stop wasting your time. This isn't philosophy. It's mathematics. It's called the 80-20 principle. And once you see it, you'll never look at your life the same again. What is the 80-20 principle? Also known as the Pareto principle. It says 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. 80% of your happiness comes from 20% of your experiences. 80% of your problems come from 20% of your habits. It's not a perfect ratio, but the pattern is real. A small percentage of your actions are creating the majority of your impact. The rest, it's just noise. So why does this matter? Because most people live in reverse. They chase everything. Say yes to everyone. Fill their days with low leverage activity and wonder why they feel burned out, stuck, or uninspired. But extraordinary people, they focus relentlessly on the vital few. They identify their 20% power zone and double down. That's not laziness. It's strategic excellence. The 80-20 principle at work. Think about your own life. What 20% of people bring you 80% of your joy? What 20% of tasks move 80% of your goals forward? What 20% of habits are sabotaging your growth? Start there. Make a list. Circle the patterns. Once you identify the 20% that matters, your life becomes radically simpler and exponentially more powerful. This is how high performers build momentum, not by doing more, but by doing less of what doesn't matter. Real life. Examples. Let's go deeper. In relationships, you don't need 50 friends. Usually 3 or 4 people give you most of your connection and meaning. Focus on those relationships. Invest deeply. Let go of social obligations that drain you. In learning, you don't need to master everything. Most of the value in your field comes from mastering the fundamentals. Choose the few skills that give you leverage and go deep. In productivity, instead of crossing off 25 micro-tasks, identify the one domino that makes everything else easier or irrelevant. Do that first, every single day. This isn't working harder, it's working smarter with precision. The emotional trap, why we resist this. Now, if this principle is so powerful, why doesn't everyone use it? Because we're taught that effort equals worth. We believe, if I'm not exhausted, I must not be doing enough. If I'm not busy, I must be falling behind. If I simplify, I'm cutting corners. But that's a lie, programmed by a culture that glorifies hustle and ignores alignment. The truth? Excellence is not doing everything. It's doing the right things, with focus, intention, and mastery. When you free yourself from the pressure to be everywhere, you finally have the clarity to be exactly where you're meant to be. Designing your 20%. Let's make this actionable. Here's a simple weekly ritual that can rewire your entire trajectory. Step 1. The 80-20 audit. Once a week, ask yourself, what few actions last week created most of my progress? What few people uplifted me the most? What few decisions drained the most energy? Write them down. This is not about judgment, it's about awareness. Step 2. Ruthless elimination. Next, make one bold move. Say no to a recurring task, a toxic pattern, or a shallow relationship that lives in your 80% drain zone. Even one small cut frees massive energy. Remember, every no to something trivial is a yes to something meaningful. Step 3. The 20% focus ritual. Every morning, before diving into the noise, write down your one thing for the day. The one task, idea, or decision that, if completed, will move your life forward more than anything else. Then protect it like your legacy depends on it. Because it does. When less becomes more. Here's the final truth. Extraordinary lives are not built on balance. They're built on focus. You don't need to be everything to everyone. You don't need to master 100 things. You need to find your zone of power and double down with clarity, courage, and consistency. The world is loud. You'll be tempted to chase what's urgent over what's essential. But if you dare to trust this principle, if you design your life around the few things that matter most, you'll discover what most people never do. You don't need more hours in the day. You need fewer distractions from your purpose. Second-order thinking, seeing what most people miss. Most people make decisions like they're playing checkers. They see one move ahead, one consequence, one outcome. But life isn't checkers. It's chess. And the players who win, the ones who design extraordinary lives, they don't just ask, what happens if I do this? They ask, and then what? This is the power of second-order thinking, a rare mental habit that separates reaction from wisdom. Let's explore why first-order thinking fails. First-order thinking is easy. It's instinctual. It's the part of you that chooses fast pleasure, avoids discomfort, and makes short-term decisions with long-term consequences. It's hitting snooze, scrolling instead of creating, saying yes to the job, relationship, or opportunity that feels good now, but empties you later. It feels smart. It feels safe. But often, it's the trap, because first-order thinking only sees the immediate effect. Second-order thinking, it sees the ripple, the and then what question. At the core of this principle is a simple but revolutionary question. And then what? Not in fear, not in overthinking, but in wisdom. You got that raise, great. And then what? Does it come with burnout, loss of time, distance from what actually matters? You avoided a hard conversation, less conflict today. And then what? Silent. Resentment. A fractured connection you can't repair. The true cost of a decision often shows up later, and most people don't wait long enough, or think far enough to see it. Second-order thinking in action. Let's make this real. Example 1. Social media first-order thinking. This helps me stay connected and entertained. Second-order thinking, and then what? Fragmented focus, anxiety from comparison, compulsive distraction. You begin to realize the dopamine high isn't free. It's charging interest. Example 2. Saying yes to everything. First order. They'll like me more. I'll stay in the loop. Second order, and then what? Chronic overwhelm. No time for deep work. Resentment from overcommitting. Suddenly, what seemed like a good move is quietly dismantling your life. The biology of short-term thinking. Here's the twist. It's not your fault. Your brain evolved to prioritize survival, not strategy. Immediate food, comfort, status, these used to keep us alive. But in a modern world filled with delayed consequences, our instincts are outdated. What worked on the savannah hurts in society, and that's why second-order thinking is a superpower. Because it lets you do what your default brain won't. You stop playing checkers and start seeing the entire board. Mastering the mental model, here's how to install this lens into your life. Step 1. Slow down your thinking. Second-order thinking doesn't happen in chaos. Create space and even 60 seconds to breathe before big decisions. Ask yourself, if I do this, what happens next? And then play it forward. Visualize not just the result, but the chain reaction. Step 2. Create cascading awareness. Use this quick filter before acting. Is this choice giving me something now, or building something for later? What could be the second consequence, the third? It doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be aware. Step 3. Apply to key areas of life. Try this with money decisions. Will this feel smart next month or just exciting today? Health habits. Is this choice building a foundation or just a fix? Conversations. Will silence protect my comfort or damage my connection? Once you start seeing second-order effects, your decisions elevate fast. From episodic to systemic thinking. Most people live episodically, jumping from moment to moment, treating each as isolated. But second-order thinkers live systemically. They understand that every decision is a domino, and some dominoes are massive. They begin to optimize not for today, but for the system that shapes all tomorrows. That's the shift from reactionary living to strategic design. Why most people don't do this? Because it's uncomfortable. It reveals that some of our smart decisions were actually mistakes. It exposes the gap between what feels good now and what leads to what we want most. But here's the truth. Avoiding discomfort today often guarantees it tomorrow. And once you embrace that, you start to see resistance not as a warning, but as a signal of transformation. The true gift of second-order thinking. It's not about being perfect. It's not about predicting everything. It's about developing a kind of vision, one that lets you live with intentional foresight rather than accidental hindsight. You stop saying, I didn't see that coming, and start saying, I'm glad. I saw that coming and chose better. That's rare, that's powerful, that's extraordinary. Implementation. How to make this a way of living, not just thinking. So here we are, you've been handed a set of mental frameworks, not just to understand life better, but to live it differently. But let's be honest, knowledge without action is just another form of distraction. It feels productive, but it changes nothing. The extraordinary life doesn't come from knowing more. It comes from seeing differently, thinking differently, responding differently, consistently. So how do you install these mindsets into your actual life? The answer isn't motivation, it's design. Design a life that triggers growth. Automatically use 3 powerful levers, triggers, tiny cues that remind you who you're becoming. Put a photo of your future self near your desk. Before every major decision, ask, what would my 80-year-old self regret more? Rituals. Small, consistent habits that keep your mind aligned. Every Sunday, review one decision you made that. A week, ask, was this reaction first order or second order? Environment. Shape the space around you to support who you want to be. Remove distractions. Add prompts. Create cocoons for deep work. Surround yourself with voices that reinforce your evolution, not your limitation. These aren't hacks, they're scaffolding for transformation. And remember this, the extraordinary. Life doesn't look like a viral highlight reel. It looks like intention, clarity, and alignment. Repeat it until it becomes reflex. You won't always feel ready. You won't always feel brave. But every time you practice one of these frameworks, even briefly, you're installing a new operating system for your mind. And over time, it compounds. Not into perfection, but into something far more powerful. A life that feels like it was designed by you. For you. A life that's not just extraordinary to look at, but extraordinary to live inside of. If this message helped shift your thinking, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who's ready to stop chasing and start designing their extraordinary life. See you in the next one.